All right. Can you see my screen?
I can.
Yes.
All right. So I think we still have a minute to go. So to all the attendees, you are all on mute. If you have questions or anything, you can just unmute yourself and ask some question. We are going to start now. It's 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time. We are going to record this session, and we'll share the link with all the attendees when we are done. So we are going to do a webinar. It's our second webinar. We did one for higher education. This one focused on reports. We had a few clients asking us about reports. So we are going to have two sides. One will be EasyVista Service Manager reporting, and one will be based on how to use service apps with reports. Jack and Chris will be the main presenter. Chris will focus on Service Manager reporting, while Jack will focus on service apps. For those who don't know us, just one slide, and then I will let the experts talk. FMX Solutions, we've been an EasyVista partner since 2009. We have done 100+ implementation in North America. You will see some of the names. We are based in Canada. Our headquarters is in Canada, with a US headquarters in New York, and we have offices all over the US. And we are the only EasyVista Elite partner in North America. So we wanted to share our experience with reports and maybe take some time to answer questions. I would say if you have questions, feel free to ask. We'll leave some time at the end of the session for you to ask questions too. So feel free to reach out. Chris, I'm going to give you the screen.
All right. Okay, so everyone should be able to see my screen now. So kind of quick background on myself. I've been working with, for those of you who don't know me, I've been working with EasyVista for almost 8 years now. My background is in reporting and business intelligence through a variety of different tools. So what we want to focus on for this webinar is kind of the tips and tricks and some of the unique things we can do with reporting that you may not be aware of. So some of the kind of interesting use cases that we've run into as we've implemented EasyVista for our clients, and some of the cool things that we've built out to make your life easier, but also to make some of the reporting a little bit easier, a little bit cleaner. So the reports that we're looking at here are ones that I've put together. They use some kind of unique function that allows us to, do some cool things. So specifically, I'm going to start with some of our top N reports. This is a common request that we get, whether it's top 10 ticket categories, top 10 service request categories, or even just a top N caller report. So let me know which of my employees needs more assistance than other people, or something that allows me to reach out and see if they need additional training or other kind of scenarios. So our top N ticket report right now is looking at just the top 10 incidents, and I also have it built out to look at the top 10 requests. Now, there are a couple of things specifically this full catalog path that aren't necessarily present in some of your queries. A lot of people don't know that they exist, that this particular function exists.
Chris,
So,
could you zoom in a little bit,
oh,
maybe?
yeah. Sorry, I've got a big screen, so sometimes the resolution's a little. Is that better?
Way better, thank you.
All right. So with a lot of times, if you've built reports out, you've noticed probably one of two things. If you use the category last level, it requires you to drill down through the hierarchy in order to view everything. If you try to use category full in your report, you've probably noticed there's no breakpoint radio button to allow you to build this sort of report that we're looking here. There is an additional table called SD catalog path that actually stores the full path in this format and allows you to use it in a report in much the same way that category last level does. Allows you to use a breakpoint, but it doesn't require you to drill through the report the same way that category last level does. So I can see here that depending on what my time frame is, this is looking at a larger time frame, I can see exactly without having to drill. I can if I want to, it's not currently set up that way, but I can say, okay, of this period of time, here are the top 10 incident categories. Then I can click on each one, I can see all of the tickets, and it really only takes one click as opposed to 3, 4, 5, depending on how deep your incident catalog goes. Same goes for the service requests. Same process here. I can see exactly over a specific period of time without having to drill down all of the top 10 requests, how many requests there were. We can see here we've got some EasyApp requests that Jack has set up for us, and these are those most common 10. So this uses a function, and this is a little bit more advanced. For those of you who are comfortable with SQL, a lot of this is just kind of tweaking things, copy paste, and making the necessary change. This looks a lot more complicated than it is. Whenever we build these, then I take it, it's all copy paste. So when we build out a lot of these, I'm not going to get too far into the weeds here because there's a lot of other reports I want to get to. When we build out some of these more advanced ones that use the advanced mode, and you get kind of stuck here, what you can do is actually simply take this part out, go into assisted mode, and actually start building the query out here. You can see here that I've built this to look at all of the incident categories. Then I can add in all of my other pieces, then switch back to advanced mode and make the necessary adjustment. So I can add ORs, add some brackets. I don't necessarily have to build everything from scratch. So the top 10 incident and requests is pretty much the same query with the exception of it looks at specific catalog hierarchies. A lot of that is I can take that, just replace a small value and move on. Okay, so the top N functionality I've replicated across different things. I don't necessarily have to do top N categories. The other option that I have here is the top N caller report, which is another commonly asked for thing. I want to know over a period of time, who calls in the most. So the same logic applies, but now I can see, all right, I've called in 136 times over a period of time. Jack has called in 309. So you can see here that, Jack by far and large is the biggest offender, if you will, the biggest user of the service desk function. So this is something I may want to look into and say, all right, is Jack just the point of contact for his department and they just lay everything on him? Or does Jack need some additional training on some of the applications to reduce his need to call into the service desk, or anything else that may arise from looking at the tickets that he submits? Maybe it's just he submits requests for his department. That's just the way it is. So in either case, the logic is simply just show me. It is what is called a nested query, where we look at and say, here's the query that says, show me the top 10 callers over a period of time. Show me top 10 categories over a period of time. And that allows us to, say, all right, show me all of this stuff in a report. One of the other reports that we use for someone who's built reports, one of the things, especially within EasyVista, that always kind of drove me nuts, not necessarily from an EasyVista perspective, but from just a general reporting for everybody, is that I would always get, I want a report that shows me tickets assigned to a group that I manage. And, if you have a lot of different groups, that might amount to, 10, 20, 30 reports, one for each group. So I can say, show me all the tickets that are assigned to the network team, the infrastructure team, the desktop support team. Now I have to manage, all of these reports. I don't want to do that, because then it makes my life as essentially the report administrator significantly more difficult, because I've got to invest more time to make changes to each and every one of those. So there's a function or a variable that we can use that allows me to make a dynamic report instead of a static. So a lot of times, people will put together a report that says, type in the group name, or put those in the filters so that I can select and show based on the selected filter. But there's an easier way to do that. So this particular report, I'm going to show by group, is showing all open tickets assigned to groups that I manage. Now, this seems somewhat redundant, given I can go to operation actions and actions for my groups. While that's true, what we're assuming here is that as a manager, I don't necessarily want to be a member of the queue. I don't want to get all the emails. It's not, I don't need to worry about that. So if I'm not a member of the queue, then operation actions and actions for my groups doesn't necessarily give me the option to see that unless I'm a member. So this actually works around that. If you've ever built a group, you've probably noticed that there is a group manager field. So for these 4 groups, I've plugged in myself as the group manager. So I'm now manager of facilities electricity, PE desktop, desktop USA, and the SPOC USA group. So what I'm going to do is, over on the side here, I'm going to remove myself as manager of one of those queues. And then I'm just going to simply hit F5. And you've noticed that the facilities queue has disappeared from my report. I removed myself as manager of that queue, so I no longer see it in my report. So what we're using here is a variable that some of you may have seen. Those of you who have built workflows or business rules are probably used to seeing the ID variable. It's the @ID symbol. There's another one that you can use that is called the @employee ID @ this one right here. So this employee ID variable returns basically the logged in user. So right now, as a logged in user, this particular report is showing all open actions for groups that I am the member of. So I can depending on who views this report, it will show them the groups that they manage. So if Jack were to view this report, Jack would see only the groups that he manages. He wouldn't see mine, I wouldn't see his, and I don't necessarily have to create multiple reports. I don't have to create multiple filters or do anything else to be able to meet both his requirements and mine. We may have some different views, but those are a little bit easier to manage in the long term. So this particular variable is really handy for other functions, being able to show, tickets that I've opened using that variable where I'm the recipient, or I'm the requesting person, or I'm the solving person. Show me a report that shows all tickets that I've resolved over a period of time. That's another handy use of that particular variable. So anytime you want to make something dynamic that is going to adjust based on who runs the report, that will be invaluable. All right, so the next set of reports that I want to look at deal with some date ranges. So some of the things that we do with groupings, some more advanced SQL functions, basically taking out portions of a date and being able to report on that. So the first one that I'm going to look at is called hardware refresh by phase. And this was one that I built for a client that has, instead of refreshing assets as they become available or as they get to their scheduled end date, they do everything in phases. They have a spring phase, they have a fall phase, and they also wanted to see the phases for the following year so that they could make the necessary budgetary allocations for next year. They could do some financial planning. The interesting thing about this particular report is that, again, we wanted to focus on making my filters dynamic. I didn't want to have to edit the report every single year to change the date range or even ask the user to specify the date range. The phases always stay the same. So we got a little creative with some of SQL's date functions. So we can see here for the phase 1 spring refresh, we've got a phase 2 fall refresh. If you pay attention to the scheduled refresh date, it will change. It's a specific block of time. We do have some from 2019. So spring is from basically March until the end of August, and then the fall refresh is basically August through the beginning of the following year. So you can see here that we've got some from December, and we do also have this one from January of the following year. But I also have spring of the following year and spring or fall the following year. Now, the way that these 4 filters are set up is that regardless of when I run them, whether it's this year, next year, the year after, or 2025, it will automatically adjust and display the phase based on what the current year is. So if you're running it next year, the spring refresh is going to show March through August of 2019 instead of March through August of 2018. So if we look at the way this is set up, now this is a little bit more complex, but it's one that does not necessarily require a full understanding of SQL. You really only have to understand how to use some of these, what are called date partitions. What date partitions allow us to do is extract a piece of a date. So, August 28th, 2018 has 3 parts to it. It has the day of the month, and the year. And then if you add time, then you also have time components. So what we're taking here is saying, all right, anything between 3/1, so that's March 1st, and we're adding in the current year. So this date part, current year, so I'm using get UTC date. If you remember, EasyVista stores everything in Universal Time or Greenwich Mean Time. Get UTC date will return the current time, current date and time in UTC format. There's also a get date, which returns it in the current server time zone. So get UTC date is going to return, if I were to run this right now, would return 8/28/2018. Now the date part, the date partition is saying, all right, well, I want the year. I don't care about the other pieces. I want the year. So it's going to take 2018 and it's going to stick that into the 3/1. So now I get what amounts to scheduled end is between 3/1/18 and 8/31/2018. Now, if I were to run this next year on the same date, that date part is going to return 2019. So it gives us that flexibility without having to necessarily adjust it manually every single time we run the report or every single year to give us the necessary view of the following or the next 12 months. Now the next piece, the fall refresh, obviously goes into the next year. So that I have to make some tweaks here. So this is between September 1st and February 28th of the following year. So this is where we get a little creative. So we're using the same logic here. We're trying to get the year out of the current date, but we're adding 1. So in this case, 2018 plus 1 equals 2019. So now we're looking at 9/1/2018, which is what this date part does, and 2/28/2019. So this plus 1 adds an additional year to that date partition. And so again, regardless of when we run it, whether it's this year, next year, or the following year, it's automatically going to adjust and add in and show us for the following year and include that. So for the next two, which actually look at the following year, we're applying the same logic here, where we're getting 3/1/2019 and 8/31/2019 using that plus 1. The next filter instead, just simple copy paste, and then I just add plus 2. That will give me 2020. So I'd get between 9/1/2019 and 2/28/2020. So a lot of this is just I build out one and then find out what math I can do to get all of that put together. So there's a lot of different things you can do to say and I'll show you that in the next report is show me where tickets that are submitted on Mondays, tickets that are submitted on Tuesdays, tickets that are submitted first quarter of this year, second quarter, first semester, etc. So this is where this is a little bit more complex, a little bit more dynamic. We have some additional groupings within the views that allow us to kind of replicate some of this behavior. So we'll go into our next report, our final one for this session. Our incidents by creation date, looking at some of the date groupings. So for those of you who've built some of the reports and have probably done by month and year, that's a pretty standard request from anyone who needs to see a report. But there's some additional date groupings that I think are particularly valuable that don't get enough use. And those are the day of week and the hour date groupings. So in one of my previous positions, one of the things that we were a 24/7 shop. So one of the things that we were looking at was trying to figure out when we decided to move to 12-hour shifts was, when does that 12-hour shift begin and end? When is the lull in the day so that we can make the appropriate changeover from first shift to second shift without having to or without having an impact on the inbound call volume. So this is where we looked at, the day of week and some of the hour reports to see, when is the highest call volume on a given day or particular part of the day. So by day of week, looks at everything and it tells us, which days are our busiest. So is it a Monday? Is it a Tuesday? And then being able to look at this over a period of time. So if I know that if I want to move to a 4-day work week, for example, is it Monday through Thursday or is it better Tuesday through Friday? In most cases, Monday is usually the busiest because everybody resets their password on Friday, comes into work on Monday, and then forgets it. I've done that myself. So this gives us kind of an example of, all right, so let's look at that call volume and find out, which days are the busiest so that we can make business decisions based on that information. The other option that we looked at is grouping by hour. So we basically look at, of all the tickets that are submitted, at what point during the day do they come in? Do they come in, standard, 8 to 5? Is there a specific period in the day that, it's higher? So if we're looking at, incident creation, a lot of times the busiest is between 8:30 and 9 o'clock and between 1 and 2 o'clock when people come back from lunch. So we can see here that, my highest volume here is around 1 o'clock. This is all in military time. So this is 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock are the highest volumes, and then 10 a.m. Is the next highest. So I can look at this over any specific period of time that I want to, whether it's, show me the breakdown for last week, last month, last year. That will allow me to look at that for a specific period of time and, evaluate that and analyze it. A couple other options that we can do here. Now, this is where we get to use the view, but I want to see tickets submitted by hour for a given day of week. I want to combine the filter or the view that I just had, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and show them by hour. So this is where we get and we take a filter and combine it with a view. So given that there is no weekday by hour as a view grouping, I can mimic that behavior with a filter. I have Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday created. So if I pick Monday, this is going to show me the hour breakdown with my date range in mind for every single Monday within that date range. Then I have Tuesday. And then finally I have Wednesday. So I can do these for each of the days and then being able to see, again, on Mondays, when is that high call volume coming in. So what we're doing here is another, date partition. Instead of the year, we're looking at day of week. So Monday, so date part, this this is the designator for day of week. So the Y was the designator for year. Extract the year from that creation date. This one is saying, all right, take the day of week. So it knows based on the calendar year, it'll be able to tell you this was a Monday, this was a Tuesday, this was a Thursday, this one was a Sunday, and it's in numerical format. So 1 is Sunday, 7 is Saturday. So 2 through 6 are going to be your Monday through Friday. So I'll be able to see here that, all right, show me everything on Monday, and then I simply copy paste this into a new filter, change the 2 to a 3, that gives me Tuesday, do the same thing for Wednesday and update that to 4 and continue on from there. So that gives us some, some functions without necessarily having to get into using another tool set and learning another tool set to try to extract that data. A lot of that can be done either with using some of the view functions or using some minor, SQL syntax. We're not asking you to design, functions. Just a little, date part, date add, or some of those that really just require a date and some numbers. Those will give you some of that flexibility that you may not otherwise have within the tool, and that wouldn't necessarily require you to use a licensed tool like Tableau or Crystal Reports. All right, so that about wraps it up. So I will turn this over to Xavier, and we'll move on to service apps.
Do you have any questions so far, or should we move to service apps with Jack? You would have to, attendees, you would have to unmute yourself on the dashboard to ask a question or ask a question directly in the panel. All right, so I guess we are going to Jack.
Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. One note to what Chris was showing you. If you're not familiar with SQL, there's a great website out there called, I think it's W3 Schools. Great breakdown of simple SQL functions like that Chris was showing you regarding like the date part and other areas of SQL that might be useful. You don't need to, like Chris said, you don't need to know a lot of SQL at all. It's really elementary. And that website breaks it down. It couldn't be any simpler. So if you are inclined to learn a little more SQL than you know today, and you feel you're not strong on it, you might want to visit that site. I think it's w3schools.com. If you search anything with SQL in it, like SQL date part, W3 Schools is usually right at the top of the list. Okay, so we've got about 28 minutes left. My presentation really isn't going to take that long, so we'll probably open the floor for some questions. I wanted to start out by showing the difference between a report that's presented in Service Manager versus in Service Apps. So the use case might be, we need a report that is accessible by a VP or a C-level person, and they need to be able to access that report on their own. They really don't have any need to be in EasyVista Service Manager. And so we just want to make it easier for them to access, and we would like to make the report look nicer. Maybe there's a way to do that, and we have done that with Service Apps. So here's an example. I'm going to pull up an example of a report. This is a report's mobile device activity report. Don't worry about what the subject of this report is so much as what the report looks like. So this is a report of mobile activity that's going on. So this was a real world report that we developed for a client, and this is a real world scenario where the C-level or whoever needed to access this report was not in an EasyVista group, didn't really need a license. They just needed this information, but they needed it on a regular basis. And it was ideal if we could present it in a more user-friendly fashion than this report in this case, where there might be a lot of columns and you have to scroll left and right to see all the columns. And that's just not as user-friendly as it could be. It's fine, the data is here, but there is another way to display this report. And so what we did was we built this report and used it as a data source in Service Apps. So if we flip over to Service Apps, this is what the report looks like in Service Apps. So instead of having multiple 10, 20, whatever columns, we've created a block of data for each record. and all the data, all the columns are visible without scrolling left or right. Then obviously there's the formatting. We can personalize it. We can have it match your company's corporate ID. In this case, we're showing who's running the report. We've added a couple extra filters if they want to switch between seeing everything versus last month and this week and so on. So we have some of the functionality. Now, you don't get all the functionality that you have in Service Manager and Service Apps, but it can be a very useful way to share data and reporting with certain people. Now, I certainly wouldn't recommend building all your reports in Service Apps, but there might be those reports like this one where it's justified putting a little extra work into a site like this that allows you to present the data to whoever needs it whenever they need it. Okay, and it also prints well. It's HTML, so it prints as well as HTML prints. So this is a great way to format a report that you need to share with someone who's looking for a little more than the standard Service Manager style report, and formatting it in a way and making it available that's more convenient to the user. Okay, so this is one example of using Service Apps basically for just an ordinary everyday report, but putting it where it's easily accessible. In other words, just give them the URL and formatting it appropriately, differently. So in this case, each record has, takes up a lot more real estate vertically, but you don't have to scroll left and right at all for each record. And of course, we can scroll down as far as we need to view all the records. Now, this is a pretty neat report, by the way. This is showing activity that has happened to mobile devices, just in case you're interested. So this client needed to know, well, what's going on with our mobile devices? What type of activity has happened over a particular date range? And so this is showing when locations change or owners change. This is a report of the changing activity on their mobile devices. So if that's a report of interest to you, then let us know. Now, when I built this site for this report, I also put in, and by the way, if you have any questions about the reports or what we're talking about or presenting, go ahead and unmute yourself and speak up, or chat and Xavier can unmute you if you're not able to. So this is a site that I set up that has two different pages, and I put a little page change icon in the upper right corner. So the next thing I wanted to show is a report that has multiple line graphs in it. So it's layering the data. In this case, the data is showing incidents, requests, and change requests. And by the way, all this data is coming from our demo environment. So there isn't consistent data. Obviously, we're not using it like a real world user does. We have spits and spurts of activity when we're developing, and then it just sits for a week or two. So the data may not look typical to what you would see, or these curves or line graphs probably don't represent what you would see in your environment. And because our data tends to be stale in that demo environment for long periods, we're showing a longer period than you probably would. So we're going from 2017 to 2018. It's not that long, but anyway. So as you roll over this report, you can see for each data point how many incidents, requests, and change requests you have, the definition for each of the lines, the colors, and so on. The legend, that's what I was looking for, is up in the upper right-hand corner. And you can layer, as far as I know, as many different types of data that you needed to on top of each other in a chart like this. Now, in this case, we're using the date by month as our x-axis, our bottom axis. And so if you're going to layer data, you do have to have something common, and it would be, in this case, the date range that we're using. Now, if we were to look at that same report in Service Manager, we can present the same information And this is the report that I'm using as a data source for Service Apps, but this is what it looks like in Service Manager. So in this case, we're looking at incidents. So you can see the shape of the curve here. If we go back to Service Apps for incidents are the red one, there's the shape of that curve. So it's the same, actually it does look a little different for some reason, but it is generally the same report. But we have to flip between the different filters to see change requests versus service requests. Okay, and so Service Apps gives us the ability to layer. I'm sorry, I was comparing requests to incidents. So yeah, these curves do match.
Jack, could this be consolidated in one dashboard? This specific indicator?
In Service Manager?
In Service Apps, yes.
Oh yes, yeah. So I'm going to show you a dashboard as well. So, and you can do that using continual improvement dashboards as well. You can have multiple versions of this report so that you can see the different, you can see instance, change requests, and service requests at the same time, but you just can't layer them. So Service Apps has the advantage of being able to layer your data, so we can put one on top of the other. And by the way, you can also turn off some of the data. So for example, if I didn't want to see the green requests, the graph redraws for the data that it's still showing, incidents and change requests, and uses all the real estate to display it. So you can see at a more granular level what's going on between incidents and change requests in this case. You can show only one item. Maybe we want incidents and requests without changes. And you can put filters and so on. This particular report isn't showing any filters. So this report is using the same theme as the previous report, blue and dark blue at the top. Super Evil Megacorp is our company. Obviously, this is just a demo. So this is an example where you could create the equivalent of a dashboard. In this case, it's not so much a dashboard, it's a reporting tool, and we have different pages for different reports. We could have put these reports all on a single page and just scroll up and down to see the different reports, or we can present the reports in the form of a dashboard. And that's what this is. This is the EasyVista Executive Dashboard. This is a template that you can download from the wiki and install on your own. After you've installed it, and it doesn't take that long to install it, you do though need to determine how you want to calculate the different data points. Okay, so you'll populate this with your own data so that obviously this dashboard is relevant to you. But out of the box, this is what it looks like. Now my demo environment is pretty slow, so as I switch between these different pages on the left-hand side, it might take a little bit for the screen to refresh. So this is the home screen, where we're just seeing some basic information about the different tabs that we have in this dashboard. Cost management is the first tab after home, and this shows you some data. Again, I'm not going to wait for the thing to load all the data. The health status, what sort of availability have we had, and are there any current unavailabilities that are ongoing or that are active at the moment? Service desk, what's going on in the service desk, incident backlog, lates, progress, and customer satisfaction. Again, you pick and choose what metrics that you want to display, but this is just an example of what a dashboard can look like. Obviously, if you're not using Service Apps, this is a good reason to consider using Service Apps. The ability, not just for a self-service portal, which we have awesome examples of self-service portals that if you're interested, let us know. We'd be happy to demo them. But the dashboarding is great tool if you're putting up a large monitor in the service desk area or in the lobby somewhere so that everyone's aware of the activity that's going on and updating live, or just for executives or whomever, giving them the ability to log in to a particular URL and find out what's going on in the business. Asset management, how many contracts, total servers, total employees, and total assets. and then assets quantity, power consumption. Most clients don't use this feature, but you could. And again, you customize these dashboards with the data that you need. A map on the right-hand side showing where your assets are, and then what's going on with your projects. Okay, you can see in this particular demo, in this this template, it's the same data here and here. Again, the goal is that you would plug in your own data. Okay, any questions about the dashboard? Is anybody using this dashboard from the wiki? Okay. Okay, so the next thing that I wanted to show you, so my goal today was to show you can use service apps as a way to display reports. You can use service apps to give some reporting effects that you don't have available to you in Service Manager, such as layering data, layering the line graphs. Present the data in a way that you can't in Service Manager. For example, consolidating columns into whatever format you like to make the report either more easily printable, which we don't do that often anymore, but some clients do need the ability to print once in a while and take it into a meeting, and just for ease of reading or viewing the report. And then in this case, dashboarding. Same thing, this is data coming from a report in Service Manager, but being presented in a way that Service Manager's continual improvement dashboards aren't able to. So this is a much more advanced way of viewing the data as opposed to using Service Manager's dashboards. So the last piece that I wanted to discuss with you is an app that we've developed called EasyApp. So this is an app. We wanted to introduce this to you because you may not have heard of it yet. It's an app for Android and iOS that allows you to use your mobile device, any mobile device that has a compatible camera, good enough camera, high enough resolution camera, as a barcode scanner. And it's a great tool for your field techs or those that are performing inventory. You don't need an additional device. You don't need a scanner. Everybody has their cell phone with them or tablet with them at all times. So this app allows you to use that device as a barcode scanner. So I wanted to demonstrate that. Okay,
Jack,
so this...
we have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
So that's a question from David. Let me see the question. Could you show how you set up the layering of the incident request and so on?
Sure. Okay. All right, so it's not difficult. I'll need to go into Service Apps Builder to show you that, and I just happen to have that report open. The first thing you need to do is build the report though, and that's what this is right here. So this report has 3 filters, one to show incidents, 1 changes, and 1 requests. If I were to edit this filter in Service Manager, we can see, edit the report in Service Manager, you can see the 3 filters here. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is just filter however you need to. They're all using a common view. Okay, and this is by date. Now, this is one of the features that Chris was pointing out. When we group by date, in this case, we're grouping by creation date, you need to use the group by column here, and you choose how you want to group. Okay, once you've grouped it by something, you can then make it a breakpoint, and the breakpoint is what gives you the grouping or the counting of something. In this case, counting incidents, counting service requests by a date range, and we've chosen by month and year. And Chris was showing examples of hour and day, or hour only, or day only. So this is where you pick the date function that you want to group by. Because I'm using demo data and there isn't a lot of exciting data, I'm just I'm grouping over a longer period by month and year. Typically, you probably look at shorter groupings, but you might want month and year as well. Once you've created that report in Service Manager, it's now available to be used as a data source in Service Apps. So here's Service Apps. The first thing you need to do before you build the page, and this is the page that has that report. I'm going to get rid of the layout grid. Under data sources, you'll need to create 3 data sources. One for, in my case, you'll need 4 data sources. You need one for each line that you want to display, and then another one to consolidate them, to aggregate them together. So I have one called Composite 1 Incident, Composite 2 CR change requests, Composite 2 service requests. If you drill into any one of these data sources, they're very similar. They're all looking at the same report. They're just using a different filter, and they're all using the same view from that report. That creates the 3 data sources that represent the 3 lines that you see in the line chart. The last piece is this composite line. By the way, these are using EasyVista data sources, just generic data sources that you use all the time. The big difference here is for this chart to work like this, you need to use the composite line chart. Actually, that's not what it's called. Let me drill into it. There we go. There it is.
It's just Jack. It's just a composite data source. That's all it's called.
Yeah, I was just trying to get it to show up there, but there it is, composite. So it's called the composite data source. I renamed it composite line chart because that's what I'm using it for. If you were to add a widget and you wanted to find that composite data source is, I forget where it is, always have to dig for it. You remember where that is, Chris?
Scroll up. I think you're looking at custom widgets.
Dashboard.
So it's a data source, not a widget.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's under applications, or I always forget which one it is. Should have been around.
Here it is.
Standards,
Hey, Jack, this is James.
Hey, James.
Hey, well, I was just going to tell you, you could search at the top there too.
Yeah, thank you. So we're using this data source widget. So it's a special widget. And in this widget, you add the 3 other data sources, in my case, 3. But this is where I was saying you can add more. I don't know, to be honest, if there's a limit to the number that you can add, but I haven't hit that limit yet. In this case, we're using the 3 data sources, and they all have the same key. It's that creation date. That's the bottom or x-axis that ties them all together. It's as simple as that. So you just pick the 3 different data sources, and if I needed to add another data source, the button's right here, I can add a 4th. So for as many data sources as you've created, you can use in this report, or as this data source. Now, once you've created that data source, click on your widget and just make sure its data source is that composite data source. And then you have the formatting down here for how you want it to look and so on. Yes, Avi, I think the attendees might be having trouble unmuting. Not sure. I know that I wasn't able to unmute earlier.
Yeah, I saw that. So you can go through the questions on the panel. If you have a question or if you want to be unmuted. I see Rolf, you have a question. So I'm going to unmute you, Rolf, if you want to talk directly.
Thank you. So my question is, in a Service Manager report, we are looking at an on-hold report, but I only want to see the most recent on-hold action if the incident has been put on hold multiple times. But I was having a hard time putting in the max action ID and getting it to function correctly. Any suggestions on how I can make that work correctly?
Replace your max with the top 1.
Right.
So this, yeah, that's something we see pretty frequently. The max is a little difficult to work with unless you're using group by and the necessary order by, but top one will usually work where max does not.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you'll still need to order by so that you get the most recent.
Yep.
Zavi, do you want to just unmute everybody? We're pretty
I
close to
just
the end.
I just don't know how to do that. I think David, you had a question.
No, he already answered it for me. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Well, I hope this was helpful to everyone. We've got another 5 minutes. Any questions that you have or anything else that you'd like to see, we'd be happy to share that with you. I'd also like to find out, your feeling, was this helpful? Have you seen these kinds of reports, or is this the sort of thing that you need to see or like to see in a webinar like this?
This is Ruth, and I think it was very helpful. And no, I hadn't thought about some of the service apps reports this way.
Good, thank you. Oh, and while you guys are thinking about questions, another thing that we wanted to share was the EasyApp app that we created. So I'm happy to, don't feel free to interrupt me if you have a question about reporting. But while we're waiting for you to come up with your questions, I thought we'd show you this EasyApp app. So EasyApp is an app that, as I explained earlier, allows you to use your device as a barcode scanner. So for example, I have a barcode scan or a barcode on my screen. If I wanted to scan that, I can use EasyApp. I have EasyApp right here on my screen so you can see what I'm doing. On the main screen of EasyApp, I just click the barcode and it brings up the reader. Point it at your barcode and it reads it almost instantly. So in this case, it found this barcode. That's the barcode. If I want to scan a different barcode like this one, bananas grow on trees, tap the barcode logo and scan it, and it reads it. So this first screen is just a way to test your scanner in your phone, make sure everything's functioning properly. Or if you were presented with a barcode and you didn't know what its value was, you could scan it and you'd see the value right here. Now the real purpose of this is to be able to do something with the barcode. And an asset update is a perfect example. So you saw this a little earlier, just a few minutes ago before I changed the screen. This allows me to, this app, this is a site that we created using service apps, and we're using it within the EasyApp app. And by the way, the EasyApp app looks like this right here. So this asset update site that we created allows us to filter our list of apps. So this is a filter allowing us to filter by deployed, in stock, and loaners, but you can filter by whatever you want. We have some statistics here. How many are deployed? How many are loaners? How many are in stock? We can search for a particular asset by serial model or the user's name. We can browse through all of our assets in the bottom section. And we can update an asset using the start button. So for example, if I wanted to update this asset, or one of the assets that I have over here in my demo list. Let's do that. We'll update this asset. Just click the start button or tap the start button in your app. And you'll be asked to choose an asset tag. Now you can just look up the asset tag if you wish, or you can use the barcode feature. And the purpose here is obviously to use the barcode feature. Just tap the barcode button at the bottom. Find your barcode, scan it, and search for that asset. The system found the asset. By the way, this is hooked into the EasyVista demo database. So we have a bunch of assets in there. Select that asset. Once you've selected the asset, different attributes of that asset are displayed. The status, the computer name, serial, main user, location, department, and any other asset information you want to display here, and we can edit any of this information. So if I walked up to a user, or if I'm going through a room and I'm updating, doing inventory and updating all our assets, confirming that the proper location and user are set up on each machine, I could basically walk up to a machine, scan its barcode, pull up its data, and if the main user is incorrect, go ahead and change the main user. Okay, search by the main user's name, scroll however you need to find it. Now I've updated the main user to Adam or Frank Adam. Go ahead and click OK, and in real time that asset's updated. Okay, so again, the purpose of EasyApp is to allow your device to be your barcode scanner, so you don't need to have another device on you. Now there are lots of other uses for that barcode scanner. For example, restocking and destocking, possibly deliveries, depending on what your process is. For the Los Angeles Police Department, we created a vest pickup process. A mobile technician is a very popular one where you might have users or technicians out in the field, and those technicians need to create new requests and incidents for people. They may need to identify assets they're creating incidents against. They can either tap in the asset number or scan it in. They can, if you have badges in your company, if the employees wear badges that have barcodes, you could scan in that employee's badge rather than typing in their login or whatever and finding that employee. So there might be a number of ways that this could be useful to increase the efficiency of your mobile tech. And the one thing I think is really fun is if you're creating a new incident for a user using your mobile device, why bother typing in the description? Use the microphone. Bananas grow on trees. We all want one. Let your device do all the typing for you. Okay, any questions about reporting?
Yeah, I think we are kind of running out of time. I know Jesslyn wanted to see more dashboards on service apps, but we might have to do another session in this case.
Yeah.
All right, so if you have no more questions, what we are going to do is we are going to, we recorded the session. We'll provide you with a link so that you can check the recording. And if you have any questions or need any help, let us know. And that's what I had. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.